From the arms on the original Lego skeleton moving in every direction to a 9-volt motor that's only 4 studs big. These are 25 Lego things you completely forgot about. Starting with a set that shipped with a working webcam in the year 2000. The Steven Spielberg Movie Maker set from Lego Studios wasn't just a regular movie-themed set. It came with an actual USB webcam, stop-motion editing software, a director's chair, and a clapperboard. You filmed your Lego movies, added special effects, and emailed them to your friends. In 2000. The set retailed at $180, and Steven Spielberg himself was involved enough that he donated his royalties from it to charity. This was super innovative for the time, but somehow the theme just quietly disappeared. But if you think that's forgotten, try asking someone about Throwbots. It was also known as Slicer in Europe, and it was a theme from 1999 where every single figure had spring-loaded arms that threw collectible discs. They weren't even sold in regular boxes either. They came in plastic canisters like Bionicle. The disc-throwing mechanism didn't actually work that well, which probably explains why it turned into Bionicle 2 years later. But something most people don't realize changed is the skeleton minifigure, unless you're a true Lego fan. The original one from 1995 had ball and socket shoulder joints, which meant the arms could rotate in any direction. They were known as floppy arms, and they were completely posable, which is honestly way cooler than the modern day arms. In 2014, Lego retired this version and redesigned it to have the fixed bent arm version every other minifigure has. So you physically can't get the same poses anymore. But did you know Lego was experimenting with tech all the way back in 2002? Spy Botics was a Mindstorm sub-theme that actually never made it out of that year. Lego only made 4 sets for the theme, and they were all color-coded, programmable robots that had an IR trans receiver, a remote, and a CD-ROM. The software had 10 built-in missions for builders to complete, and you could download more from the official website. Each set was $60 retail, but after the theme retired, not only did the website cease to exist, but 23 years later, the sets are worth almost $650 combined. But as wild as that is, it's nothing compared to what Lego was doing with Technic in the mid-90s. From 1996 to 1997, there were Technic sets that had real fiber optic cables, which I've talked about before. But what I didn't mention was the spinning LED brick that lit those cables. The problem was that sourcing those fiber optic components cost Lego more than the entire retail price of the sets. And since they were taking a loss and didn't want to raise prices, they just got rid of the theme altogether. But this wasn't a one-time mistake. The exact same problem happened with the Technic micro motor. This thing was only 4 studs big, and it powered things like satellite deployment arms and moving space shuttle components. And just like the fiber optics, Lego was making it at a price that was higher than the full price of the sets it shipped in. Lego was bleeding money on both of these pieces, and nobody even knew about it until Mark Stafford told everyone on Reddit. But moving on from financial disasters, there's a space theme from 2001 that old Lego fans love, but always forget the details of, and that's life on Mars. The thing people always forget is that it was the only space sub-theme in Lego history where nobody was trying to shoot anyone. The humans showed up on Mars, the Martians met them, and everyone just coexisted. No combat, no good guys versus bad guys, nothing. On top of that, life on Mars is the reason sand colors even exist. Colors like sand red, sand green, and sand purple all come from this theme. So technically, a piece of it is still alive today, even though it never made it past a year. And life on Mars wasn't the only space sub-theme that did something unique for a short time. Every ship in the Insectoids theme from 1998 was designed to look like an insect, and it wasn't for no reason. According to the lore, the ships themselves were called Insectoids, and they were made by aliens called Zotics ataxians so they could survive underground. Some of the smaller ones don't look that good, but bigger ones look super sick, like the Space Spider, the Sonic Stinger, and the Cosmic Creeper. Some of the sets even had lights and sounds, like the Arachnoid Starbase. However, none of this saves the theme from being sucked into the void of forgotten LEGO. But space wasn't the only place LEGO made one-time waves that nobody talks about. In 2005, LEGO released a Vikings theme. Actual Nordic warriors with longships, sea serpents, and giant stone fortresses. It wasn't even just a European release. It went worldwide after it made enough money. The sets had massive creature models like sea serpents and dragons at a scale LEGO hadn't really figured out yet, which is probably why it retired so fast. It got 7 sets and 27 minifigs in the year it was around, which isn't that bad. But Vikings isn't even the most forgotten LEGO theme. That title probably goes to Model Team, which ran from 1986 to 1999. Now, because of how long it was around, you might think this theme is pretty well remembered, but because of all of the other car themes that have come out, it gets completely overshadowed. The theme's concept was medium-sized, highly detailed LEGO cars with working steering and realistic details built at around 1 to 15 scale. And the thing is, there were 0 minifigures. The sets just existed to be realistic car models for adults, and it was over a decade before Creator Expert was even a thing. Model Team is literally the direct ancestor of everything AFOL, and most fans today don't even know it existed. But if you want a theme that was ahead of its time in a completely different way, Homemaker ran from 1971 to 1982, and honestly didn't even feel like LEGO in the beginning. For the first 3 years, the sets were just furniture. Kitchens, living rooms, nurseries, all buildable, fully tiled, and with no figures at all. The 1973 catalog literally told you to use your own dolls. Then in 1974, LEGO finally added what they called maxi figures. These big figures with movable arms, interchangeable hair, and different faceplates. After this, Homemaker got like 60 more sets, but no one really talks about it unless they're covering the history of minifigures. Which actually brings up something worth pointing out about them. For the first 22 years they existed, the back of every single minifigure torso was completely blank. The first minifigures with back-printed torsos didn't show up until mid-2000 in the sports football sets. And the Steven Spielberg set I talked about earlier got them too. But before 2000, if you turned any minifigure around, there was nothing there. But there's also a whole forgotten history of LEGO capes. The first one showed up in 1984 as a tiny plastic piece that attached at the neck. And from the front, you couldn't even tell it was there because it was too small to see. The only time this cape piece was ever worn forwards was in set 6040, the blacksmith shop. But other than that, you'd never know it was there from the front. But that all changed in 1993 because the Dragon Master from the Dragon Knight's Castle sub-theme got the first ever fabric cape, and it was a cloth piece with a printed green dragon on it. This was also the first non-plastic element in a regular system LEGO set, and once it was out there, it spread. The same material got used for sails, flags, and more capes across multiple themes. It was a genuine turning point in how LEGO made accessories. But even after all that, LEGO thought they still hadn't quite nailed it, because now there are technically 3 different cape materials, and none of them are better than that original cloth. The plastic cape before it was too unrealistic, the lighter papery version that replaced the cloth creases easily and didn't flow right, and the rubber cape introduced in 2021 can't be printed on and bunches at the neck. 3 different materials across 40 years, and the one that actually worked the best is the hardest one to find. This thing is pretty buried, and LEGO's also done a pretty good job of burying entire themes that most fans pretend never existed. From 2003 to 2006, they made over 90 sets of clipped-together jewelry, hair clips, picture frames, and pencil cases under the Clickits theme. They made 150 new molds molds, and 49 colors. And 6 of these colors have never been in any other theme besides Clickits. The pieces were technically compatible with LEGO, they just couldn't really build anything. The funny ending to this story is that LEGO basically revived the whole concept in 2020 as dots, and people absolutely loved it. So maybe Clickits was just 17 years too early. But there's a certain Technic piece with a much sadder story, the pneumatic air tank from 1997. The whole point of it was to act like a battery for the compressed air system. You'd pump it full by hand and then run your pneumatics off the stored pressure without having to keep pumping. LEGO made 5 different versions between 1997 and 1998, and even though one of them made it all the way to 2016, it was only ever in 12 sets. The others were only in 1 to 3 sets, and because of how good this piece was, Technic fans literally beg LEGO to bring it back all the time. LEGO was super innovative in the late 90s and early 2000s, and it's super obvious with a piece like this air tank, but it's also obvious in the sports theme. In the early 2000s, LEGO was trying to do something they'd never done before. Make functional sports sets so kids could play actual games with them. The NBA line from 2003 to 2004 actually licensed real NBA players. Kobe, Shaq, Allen Iverson, and a bunch of others all got real minifigures. But the wild part is what it took just to make them hold a basketball. Wikipedia confirms that the arm mold alone needed a team of 4 designers and 6 engineers, and took an entire year to develop. The figures also had spring-loaded legs and could reverse slam dunk. An entire year for an arm mold is absolutely insane. But basketball wasn't even the most elaborate play feature in the sports theme. The soccer sub-theme from 2000 to 2004 had wind-up motor mechanisms that physically launched a minifigure's leg to kick a tiny ball. Not a stud shooter, not a flick fire, an actual spring-loaded kick. The Championship Challenge set from 2000 is the best example of it, and the minifigures had completely unique leg and body molds just so they could do this one play feature. What most people also don't remember is just how big the marketing was around this sub-theme. In 2002, to tie into the World Cup, co-hosted by Japan and South Korea, LEGO soccer sets were sold as Coca-Cola promotional packs in Japan. At the exact same time, Kabaya, a Japanese candy brand, was bundling small LEGO soccer polybags with candy in them. To this day, this is one of LEGO's biggest and most elaborate collabs ever, and you never see people talking about it. But then there was the hockey sub-theme, which was somehow the most forgotten of all 3. LEGO Hockey in 2003 had real NHL branding, and the Canadian national team was there too. But just like basketball and soccer, the play feature is what made it stand out. There was a shooting mechanic where you could cock the minifigure stick back and release it to shoot a puck across the ice. The theme only ran for a year with both the basketball and soccer sub-themes, but then out of nowhere, the entire operation just stopped. And since 2007, LEGO hasn't made another play feature this cool. But while I'm talking about nostalgic play features, LEGO used to do something with castle sets that was completely different from anything they do today. Before flick fire missiles, castle and western sets had walls that were designed to break apart when you hit them. At first, people thought this was an accident, but they were deliberately less supportive at certain points, so the wall would break. The Western Sheriff's Lockup from 1996 even had a spring-loaded cell wall that was triggered by a dynamite tile. And right alongside that is something pirate fans already know. The original Black Seas Barracuda from 1989 had spring-loaded cannons. You loaded ammo into the barrel, pressed down, and it fired across the entire room. Reviewers still call them the best part of the set, but unfortunately, LEGO had to get rid of them in the US, and the international version kept them. But since then, every pirate ship slowly got decorative cannons, then stud shooters, and now nothing that actually fires a cannonball. So you can only find that specific mechanism in vintage pirate sets. Before 2006, castle sets also had real lever action catapults. You pulled the arm back, loaded it up, and fired away. The Flickfire missile came out in 2006, and it spread through every action theme by about 2008, replacing literally every single one of those mechanics with Flickfire instead. The community has been complaining about Flickfires basically ever since, and honestly, I can't blame them. Nothing about a Flickfire feels as satisfying as those OG catapults and cannons. But this last thing is so simple that it doesn't even make sense that it's gone. The string winch on classic town and Technic crane sets. These things were all over the place back in the day, and people loved how interactive they are. You turned a hand crank and a hook on a real string would go up or down really smoothly. It's not complicated at all, but the tactile feel of it is something modern Lego cranes completely lost. Now they simulate it with Technic gears moving a hook up a fixed arm with no string tension whatsoever. You can still find loads of these old winches on Bricklink, but when's the last time you've seen them in an actual set? It's probably been a really long time, but how many of these Lego things did you forget about? Be sure to let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.